Hello everybody, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk a little bit more about converting UTM north to true north and why it can be very, very important. It's not difficult to do, and sometimes it really makes a difference. Now, trusting the compass, even now a regular compass is definitely going to have problems, but even on a smartphone, it's not going to give you a correct answer for direction. There are places on Earth where that is true, but they are rare. And most of the time, there is something called declination, which is the difference between magnetic north and true north. And then if you're inside your house, you also have all the electromagnetic interference from the electrical lines running all through your walls. Compasses, unfortunately, are just really garbage at doing this in most places on Earth. The stars would be right, but of course you have a hard time doing that inside your house. But we know this is the way that it works. Now, I have experienced this in my current house, which was purchased before Google Maps existed. I think Google Earth might have existed, but it wasn't free, so I didn't use it. And so instead, I walked outside my house and I measured it with an old style compass. Smartphones didn't exist either, of course. And it read either South 2 or South 3. I don't remember the exact number, but since those charts were the same, it didn't really matter. I wasn't too worried. Now, our experience living in the house wasn't consistent with a house with that direction. Also, as time went on, just looking at where the sun was with respect to the house, I said, there's just no way this is a south-facing house, because the sun was hitting areas that it shouldn't have if it was truly south-facing. So I became quite suspicious. And we know that chi comes from the sun, because if there were no sun, there'd be no life and no life force. So it is the sun and how the earth spins around that creates everything in terms of energy here on Earth. Now, once I realized that Google Maps could help me with this, I got on Google Maps and looked, and we're very, very clearly a southwest one facing house. And that is consistent with what I was seeing the sun do. But the nice thing is, because we had an activated special formation that is consistent with our experience living here. It was really clear that that's what you should use. Now, physics is also in agreement with using true north instead of compass north or even UTM north. These two are a lot closer than the compass north may be, but there is still can be quite a bit of error here, and it can be important. It depends on your exact location, how important it is. Now, converting it can do things. It can possibly change the facing direction of your house. That is pretty rare. But if your facing direction happens to be really close to one of the divisions, it could. But it's much, much more likely to change the subsectors where your important things are. Your main door, your range, your bed, and your chair that you use when you're working. And so this is where the real important stuff comes in. This is where you're much more likely to see some sort of change when you go from UTM north to true north. So the most likely ones that are the ones that you have a hard time changing and could be really make a big difference is the subsector location of your main door and your range. These two things are pretty fixed unless you do a remodel in your kitchen or you do a pretty major thing to change your main door. And so this is what you really have to look at. You can move your bed and your desk usually pretty easily. So that isn't such a big deal, but these two are. Now, the larger your residence, the more likely this correction will make a significant change occur. And if you have a very long and narrow house, then the two ends that are farthest from the center will have a much bigger change in the location of your dividing lines than the ones that are closer to the center. So this can make a really, really big difference though. Now, also the closer your facing direction is to a subsector dividing line, the more important it is you do this correction. Your location within the UTM grid and your latitude are also important. So this your longitude and latitude. This also makes a big difference. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. This is a theoretical house, not not real. I haven't done this one, but I have had a house whose main door was so close to the dividing line between two different directions. I was really worried that we would have a different chart. And I mean, which one it was did have a different chart, but that's not this house. But anyway, this is UTM North. This is what, when you look on the satellite and you draw and you measure exactly where where your facing direction is, this is what you would find using UTM North. And if we look at detail, we can see that the main door is in East 2. It faces East 1, but the door is in East 2. And this is the center of the door opening. This is where you're supposed to do the measurement. So here I'm leaving the old UTM North is still in black here. I've took the arrow away because it was rather distracting. And the true north is shown here in red. Now this means that the whole 24 mountain ring has rotated 1.5 degrees, which is roughly half of the minimum to the maximum available amount for it to change. And so this is just halfway. Could be worse. In some cases it will be. And this is just 1.5 degrees rotated counterclockwise. That will shift this area here by the main door. And if with that, you will see that there's that center line again of the door. Now this door is in East 3. It is no longer in East 2. The house still faces East 1. This dividing line moves nearly 9.5 inches because of that 1.5 degree change in the true facing direction from the UTM. So it does make a difference, and you can see the closer you are to the center, like over here, this distance is not that far. So it moves very little, but when the farther away you are from the center of your house, the bigger the change will be. It's just geometry. It's like a slice of a pie. It's really that simple. Now, this change from East 2 to East 3 will change the Cheeman chart. That just means right now, it just means a change. I haven't looked at this. I don't know the period of this house or anything like this. It doesn't matter. That change could be for the better or it could be for the worse. It's hard to say. But there are houses that have the death door if the door is like in the center of the house, in the center of the front wall, you would have a death door. It's possible. And so this would be a good thing for it to move because you move out of being at the death door. But that is only maybe a quarter of the houses, maybe less, have that kind of achievement chart. So you can't tell until you actually know what your chart is. So let's just do another one. And here we will even see more changes. So this house happens to face Northeast 2, and its main door is in Northeast 3. So this just rotated, I think, either 30 or 45 degrees. I'm not quite sure which. And The main door, again, is just inside northeast 3. So when we do that same correction, so here, assuming that same 1.5 degree change, which is again average, we have still it's rotating 1.5 degrees counterclockwise. And that, of course, is going to change what the main door looks like. And it is now in East 1. So, and nothing has changed with where the door is located. Just to be very clear, it looks like it's changed, but it isn't. What has changed is the 24 mountain ring. Now here, again, it moves that same distance because we're talking about the exact same distance from the center of the house to the center of the door. And here, both the Chi-Men chart and the purple-white chart will change. So this can be quite dramatic. And so it depends on the situation. Sometimes it's dramatic, sometimes it isn't. And again, the facing direction doesn't change in this case either. So, this is why I say it's your main door and your range that have the most you have to worry about when it comes to having a difference between UTM north and true north. Now, the farther the important item is from the center of your residence, the more the dividing line between the sectors move. So again, that's why the long and narrow house can really be dramatic on the two ends that are farthest from the center. Now, this is how you will know exactly how much it moves. X is the distance that the dividing line will move, so that's what you're solving for. Y is the distance from the center of your residence to the location of the important feature, whether it's the main door or the center of your range or your middle of your headboard or whatever. And then you're multiplying it by delta theta. Delta theta is the UTM to true north correction. Simple as that. Applying this equation to our situation, the one I just showed you, y is 30 feet. It's a tiny bit over 30 feet. And that is from the center of the house to the center of the door, when the door's in the closed position, of course. And delta theta is 1.5 degrees. And this will move the X, the position along that front wall, will move almost 9.5 inches. And this will happen regardless of what your facing direction is. It's going to move that much when you make that correction if the correction is this size. And for this particular house, it would be exactly this. Now, there are times when that won't make a difference, but this is there is a lot of cases where it can, and this is why I worry about it. Now, the bigger your residence, the more this position of the dividing lines will move. Now, if you want to take anything to do with the 64 hexagram ring and use that in your house, you must absolutely take this into account, even if it is a tiny correction, because these hexagram sectors are only a little over 5 degrees wide. So that's really narrow. That is, it's like 1/3 of what we look at when we're looking at the 24 mountain ring. One of the castle gate methods will use the 64 hexagram ring, and your house, your main door will have a hexagram there, depending on which mini sector it's in. Everything, you can do the same thing that you do with what are your other properties, like your purple white and Chi-Men and flying stars. You can also look at the hexagram of the castle gate. Now, the mitigations of Shachi can also use the 64 hexagram ring outside of the sun and moon arrival dates. So this can happen perhaps if your neighbor does something to create Shachi for you and it's outside of your sun and moon arrival dates, you can use this. Now, I haven't gone into any real detail here because you really need precision. And if you run into that situation, I can help with that. And it's not going to be a full consult because it's not, I don't need to know everything. I just need to know a few details, and then I can help you know where to place something. Now, some of the Sanher methods also use this a 60 or 64 hexagram, not hexagram, but 64 sector ring rather than the 24 mountains. So it, although most of the time it's hard to use the Sanher because most people don't have the right landforms to be able to use the Sanher. But if you do, then this is also something you need to be careful about. And there, absolutely, because it's so easy to change what the sectors are when they're this small. Now, both Google Maps and any survey after the early 1940s uses UTM North, which is not the same as True North. And True North is defined by the axis on which the Earth spins about. So, and this will tell you how the sun hits the Earth. It'll also tell you the Coriolis force that will move water and air, and will tell you how basically feng shui is wind and water. It's all based on True North. Now, I have a calculator that can tell you to a high precision what the UTM to True North correction is. Unfortunately, it's not working now. The link is somehow not allowing you to change anything, even though you can see it. You just can't put in data. So it looks like I have to learn how to do widgets. So that's going to be a challenge, but I'll do it. And I don't know when I'll get it done, though, because they're complicated. But you can do that with just your residence's latitude and longitude. Yeah, I can tell you in a snap what it is. Now, your smartphone can actually give you a good location. Not good direction, but a good location, because it uses the the satellite, so it knows where you are. But you can also find your latitude and longitude from this website, which is what I do with people's addresses, because not everybody has a smartphone. Now, smartphones cannot do a good job in telling you your facing directions in most places on Earth, because we have declination, and then we have all the interference we have from inside your house's electromagnetic, from all the wires. So smartphones are good for location, not for direction. Of course, your smartphone, when you're using GPS, it knows where you are all the time. So this is how it directs you. It doesn't direct you by looking at what direction you're moving. I mean, it can tell that, but it doesn't rely on what your smartphone says. So again, my calculator is not working right now. And if it doesn't, you can use this website. The only downside is they only give you one digit beyond the decimal point. So it's not so precise. And sometimes that can be important. And if you're that close, then contact me and I can run a calculation for you for very cheap. What you're going to be looking for here is something that is labeled as grid north. And you're going to be adding that to your facing direction. If it's a negative number, make sure you hit the change sign button, which in effect means you're going to be subtracting that number. But again, this service only gives you one digit beyond the decimal point. Sometimes that's too close for comfort, depending on your situation. Now, the grid north will appear after you've entered your latitude and longitude and clicked the calc button. Then a grid north number will appear. And it's in the, at least at the time of this recording, there are 3 boxes below where you've added your data, and it is in the bottom line of the middle box. But it's the only one that's labeled grid north, but there's a ton of data there which I don't even understand. So, because I don't need to. Now, once you have your true facing direction, you can lay out the 24 mountain ring on your residence properly, and then you can just read things off. So it gets much easier. with the center of the 24 mountain ring in the center of your residence, and I've shown you how to do this in other videos, and there's plenty out there that can help you. You rotate the ring so that the facing direction reads as you have just determined the true facing direction to be. So you just, that's how you properly do this. Now, it is easy to read the subsectors of the important items in your thing if you have a 2-scale floor plan. If it's not 2-scale, if you just draw something by hand, you are very likely to be wrong. Now, 2-scale floor plans are really, really important. This can come from your local building department. If it's a house that was not part of a subdivision where you have maybe 5 different style homes, you might not have your particular house, but if you know which is the model home that is your style, you can find a floor plan for that, and it should be the same. And there are some real estate businesses that, or people that are associated with this, that will do a floor plan for you. They will come out, do all the measurements, and create a floor plan for you. And this is usually happens when people are trying to sell their house, and they don't have a floor plan. But one other option is if you can find some good students that are in CAD, which is computer aided drafting, or architecture or interior design programs. They all learn how to use CAD, at least most do. And it depends on, of course, where you are, but here in the United States, the way I would recommend it is you either go to or call the department that has one of these programs, and you say you want to hire some students, usually 2 is enough, to create a floor plan for you. And can you be put in touch with an instructor that teaches these classes? And the instructor will call you at some point, and they will tell you, they will say, okay, let me ask a couple students and find out. They will do the asking of the students, and if the students say yes, then the teacher will give them your contact information. And that's much better than just posting something somewhere, because you'll get a lot of offers, and some may be terrible. So you want to have somebody good, and that's my recommendation. So but you really need to have a 2-scale floor plan. Now here, once you have that 2-scale floor plan, you simply can read out where all these two things, definitely, they should be in your floor plan. But the bed, you may have to do have measurements, unless your bed and your desk cannot be moved. If they can't, when you have that student come in, you have them also measure these. Make sure they measure these. And so that is if these two, if they can't be moved. If they can be moved, then you can figure out how to do this. It's not hard to use a scale. I don't use a scale ruler. I just measure in millimeters and do the conversion because it's simple. It's not, you can do it, I'm quite sure. Now, for those who want to know more details of how UTM works and how it's related to True North, you can keep watching. If this is enough and you just want to know why it's important, you can stop watching. Now, the UTM system divides most of the planet into 60 6-degree wide longitudinal grids. In Northern Europe and parts of Russia, the grids are a little narrower, but at the two ends, they will line up with the 64 or the 66-degree wide grids. But this is because places like Sweden and Norway, they are sort of they have weird grids, or there would be a lot of errors if they use the 6-degree grids, just because of how they're located. And I understand why they did it. But the Earth point calculator will do this properly. My thing also does this properly. I think that the Earth point might do all the way up to the poles. Mine only goes up to about 80 degrees for most of the planet, which is fine because nobody lives farther north than that. Now, the first thing you need to do is determine which of the UTM grids your residence is located in to be able to do the calculation. So here is, starting with grid number 1, this is the longitude range. So this is 6 degrees, but at the end here, it's not like you have a choice to use this one or this one. If it's exactly 174 minus 174, then you have to use this. So if your longitude is anything just slightly closer to 177, you're going to use grid 1. If it's exactly 174, you use grid 2. And that's true of all of these. And that's why these are all in parentheses. Now this highlighted thing is the center of the UTM grid, and this is an important number that you will need to know to do the calculation. So there, I've done them in groups of 6, so I'll give you a few seconds. If you want to take a screenshot, you can. And this is, of course, I would say recommend you find your longitude first, make it a lot easier. And here is the next one. Again, a few seconds if you want to take a screenshot. The next one. The next one. And you can see here now we're at 0 degrees. We're somewhere in Europe. This is where I think 0 degrees is located. And here we're starting with the positive numbers now. And this is just the way it works, and this is how the grid number is assigned. And we keep going. And we have a couple more. And I think there's 2 more. And then finally, here's the last one. Now we have 180. But 180 and minus 180 are the exact same point on Earth. So if you are 180, it'll probably tell you minus 180, but you would be using grid 1 for the calculation. So, and there's not too many people that live in that particular location. It's a lot of it is ocean, but there are people that do live there. So anyway, once you know that, then this number here is the number that you need to know. Now, that is that center of the grid. That is that important number. And then you just apply this equation. Epsilon, I think that's epsilon. This is the correction, the degree angle correction from UTM north to true north. It is the inverse tangent of the difference between your longitude and the value at the center of your particular grid. That's lambda 0. And then you multiply it by the sine of your latitude. And you basically need a scientific calculator for this. A simple one probably does not have inverse tangent. It may not even have tangent or sine. Now, I'll give you a couple examples. This is Seattle. This is the center of Seattle. It's not anybody's particular house, but it is going to be in grid 10, which has the center of minus 123. Now you can see these two are pretty close to one another. So this is, you don't expect this number to be very big, that is the difference between these two to be very big. And when you do the calculation, it's a little bit under 1/2 degree. And it's hard to measure more accurately than 1/2 degree in a satellite view. In a survey, you can be very accurate. And so I prefer surveys, but very rarely can you get one. Now, the Earth Point website says 0.5 degrees, which is what this rounds up to when it comes to 1 digit beyond the decimal point. So it's correct. And this is what you add to your UTM facing direction to determine your true facing direction. Now, let's take one more example, Anchorage, Alaska. First off, it's farther north. That will lead to more error. I mean, I shouldn't say farther north, it is farther north, but it is closer to the poles. And this location is very close to the edge of its particular grid. So we expect this to be quite a bit bigger. And when we do it, it's minus over 2.5 degrees. So that can really mess things up. Especially if you're worrying about the 64 hexagram ring. This is half the size of a 64 hexagram sector, basically. Not quite, but close. Now this is, you're going to, in this case, let's say you have a facing direction of 173.5. Now this is determined by, satellite or by survey. And in this case, it could actually even change your facing direction. This would be south 2, but the actual is south 1. So it can happen. Now, that's not what happened at our house. Our problem was we have a big declination in our area, so you can't trust any kind of compass. And the division between these two is at 172.5. So this is, I just picked this to be picky and to, show you that yes, you can even have your facing direction change. But everything else in this house will also, this will really shift your particular locations of things. Now, in general, the farther you are from the equator, either way, north or south, and the closer you are to an edge of a grid cell, the larger the arrow will be. And that's just the nature of the equation. And at 30 feet, which was that house I showed you, the result would be at least 16 inches of movement of the dividing lines. So everything would rotate quite a bit. So that can make a big difference. And that will really make a big difference in the 64 hexagram ring. So that's it. I hope it was helpful, and why I am a stickler for using True North, because if you don't have the right ones, the right subsectors for everything, you could have the wrong charts, and you wondering why feng shui is not working. It's because you don't have the right charts. But thanks again for watching.